Welcome to Forbidden Files. In 1962, a scientist at R.J. Reynolds, one of the world's biggest cigarette companies, wrote an internal report. He described the amount of evidence linking cigarettes to cancer as, and this is a direct quote from his own document, overwhelming. The evidence against cigarettes was overwhelming, written by their own scientist, in their own files. And for the next 40 years, the company stood in front of cameras, in front of Congress, in front of dying patients, and said there was no proof. Medium pause. April 14, 1994. 6 of the most powerful men in American business stood before the United States Congress and raised their right hands. Under oath, one by one, each of them stated that they did not believe nicotine was addictive, that they did not believe cigarettes caused cancer, that they had no evidence their products were harmful. In their own company files the public would not see for years, their own scientists had been writing the opposite since the 1950s. This is how they got away with it. After World War II, cigarette smoking was everywhere in America. Soldiers had been given free cigarettes as part of their rations. Hollywood stars smoked on screen. Doctors appeared in advertisements recommending specific brands. One famous campaign ran the slogan, "More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette." Cigarettes were not just normal, they were aspirational. 44% of American adults smoked. The tobacco industry was one of the most powerful in the country. And then, in 1950, 2 researchers published a study that changed everything. Dr. Ernst Winder and Dr. Evarts Graham interviewed 684 confirmed lung cancer patients about their smoking habits. The results were unambiguous. Heavy, sustained cigarette smoking dramatically increased the likelihood of developing lung cancer. In 1952, Winder went further, painting tobacco tar onto the skin of mice. It caused cancer. In 1954, British researchers Richard Dahl and Bradford Hill published a massive study of doctors, showing a clear, direct relationship between the amount smoked and the risk of dying from lung cancer. The science was building. The evidence was mounting, and the tobacco companies were reading every study in medium pause. On December 15, 1953, before most of the public had even heard about the cancer studies, the heads of the 6 biggest American tobacco companies held a crisis meeting at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. They brought in one of the most powerful public relations firms in the world, Hill and Knowlton. The question on the table was not how to make cigarettes safer, it was how to make the public doubt the science. Hill and Knowlton's president, John W. Hill, told the executives that simply denying the health risks would not work. The public trusted science. So the solution was to manufacture the appearance of scientific controversy. Make it look like honest scientists were genuinely divided. Make it appear that the evidence was uncertain, when internally, their own researchers were telling them it was not. The strategy they designed that night would be used for 50 years, and it would later be copied by other industries facing inconvenient science, including the fossil fuel industry, Medeolimum. On January 4, 1954, 3 weeks after the Plaza Hotel meeting, a full-page advertisement appeared in 448 American newspapers simultaneously. It was titled, "A Frank Statement to Cigarette Smokers." It reached an estimated 43 million people. It stated there was no proof that cigarette smoking caused lung cancer, that the existing studies were inconclusive, that the tobacco companies accepted their responsibility to the public and would fund independent research to get to the truth. It was entirely written by Hill and Knowlton, and almost every word was a deliberate lie. Uog Zarkwa. The tobacco companies created what they called the Tobacco Industry Research Committee, supposedly an independent scientific body that would investigate the cancer link impartially. It was funded entirely by the tobacco companies. Its first chairman was the retired CEO of Brown & Williamson, one of the tobacco companies. Its purpose, as internal documents later revealed, was not to find the truth. It was to produce enough scientific noise, enough competing studies, enough conflicting statements that the public would conclude the question was genuinely unresolved. For 40 years, it worked. While the public campaign of denial was running, the private scientific work continued inside the companies. In 1961, an internal report for Liggett and Myers stated that cigarette tobacco contains materials that were, quote, cancer-causing, cancer-promoting, and poisonous. In 1961, A Philip Morris internal presentation acknowledged evidence that smoking may cause lung cancer. In 1962, the R.J. Reynolds scientist Dr. Alan Rodgman characterized the evidence against cigarettes as overwhelming and the evidence defending them as scant. These documents were marked confidential. They went into company files, and the public statements continued to say there was no proof. But the cancer cover-up was only part of the story. Internally, the tobacco companies had also known since the 1960s that nicotine was addictive, and they were actively engineering their cigarettes to deliver more of it. Documents later revealed that Philip Morris had developed what they called free-base nicotine, a chemical manipulation of nicotine that made it absorb into the bloodstream more rapidly, making cigarettes more addictive on purpose, while publicly stating that nicotine was not addictive and smoking was a free choice. Medium pause. And then there were the children. Internal documents revealed that the companies had systematically targeted young people, specifically children and teenagers, to recruit what they internally called replacement smokers. Because adult smokers die, the industry needed new customers, and the younger someone started smoking, the more likely they were to become a lifetime customer. One internal Philip Morris document described teenagers as young as 14 as a critical segment, while publicly, the companies denied targeting anyone under 21. The wall began to crack in 1995. A biochemist named Jeffrey Wigand had been the vice president of research at Brown & Williamson, one of America's biggest tobacco companies. He had been fired, and he agreed to talk to CBS News' 60 Minutes program. He told them that Brown & Williamson had deliberately manipulated nicotine levels, that executives knew cigarettes were addictive and carcinogenic, that he had been pressured to suppress research that supported the cancer link. The tobacco companies threatened legal action. CBS initially refused to air the interview. Eventually, it aired, and the public began to understand what the internal documents had been saying for 40 years. In 1998, 46 American state attorneys general settled their lawsuits against the 4 largest tobacco companies. The master settlement agreement required the companies to pay a minimum of $206 billion over 25 years, the largest civil settlement in American history at the time. It required them to dissolve the Tobacco Institute and the Council for Tobacco Research, the fake science organizations, and it required them to hand over millions of pages of internal documents. The documents that had been hidden for 50 years were now public. Medium pause. What those documents revealed was staggering. Company scientists had known about the cancer link since the late 1940s. Executives had deliberately suppressed internal research. Scientists who published inconvenient findings had been threatened and attacked. The fake science committees had been specifically designed to manufacture doubt. The nicotine manipulation had been intentional. The youth targeting had been systematic. The entire campaign had been coordinated across multiple companies for 5 decades, with a whole pause die. In 2006, federal judge Gladys Kessler issued a 1,682-page ruling finding the major tobacco companies, including Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds, guilty on civil racketeering charges. Organized criminal activity. She found they had known for 50 years or more that cigarette smoking caused disease and had repeatedly and deliberately denied it. The corrective statements ordered by the court, advertisements in which the companies were required to publicly admit they had lied, did not actually run until 2017 and 2018, more than 60 years after the cover-up began. The human cost of those 50 years is almost impossible to calculate. Cigarette smoking kills approximately 8 million people per year globally. In the United States alone, an estimated 480,000 people die from smoking-related illness every year. Across the decades of the cover-up, from the 1950s to the 1990s, tens of millions of people died from a product whose dangers their own manufacturers had documented and hidden. People who might have quit. People who might never have started, if the truth had been told when it was first known. The strategy the tobacco companies invented in 1953 did not die with them. The same public relations firm, the same researchers, the same tactics, manufacturing scientific doubt, funding alternative studies, attacking independent scientists, were adopted by the fossil fuel industry when confronted with climate science. The playbook that protected cigarettes for 50 years became the template for denying climate change. Different product, same strategy, same result, decades of delay while the evidence mounted. Different pause. The tobacco companies knew. Their own scientists told them. Their own documents proved it. And for 50 years, they looked the world in the eye and said they did not. The largest public health deception in corporate history, documented, proven, and still playing out in the lungs of people who never knew what they were choosing. There are dozens of stories like this one that most people never hear. Subscribe and we'll keep finding them. The next file is already open.